Avoid this mistake if you want to stop feeling stuck and overwhelmed by worry. We all know that feeling when your mind races with anxious thoughts, making it hard to move forward. But what if I told you there's a better way? A way to turn those worries into powerful actions that lead to real results. In today's video, we'll dive into how you can shift from worrying to achieving by following some key principles grounded in pragmatism philosophy. Trust me, this isn't just another motivational video. It's a practical approach to taking control and moving forward. So, if you're ready to stop feeling paralyzed by anxiety and start seeing results, stick around. You won't want to miss this. Number 1, solve problems. Don't just worry. Imagine waking up on a bright morning, filled with energy and excitement about the day ahead. The sun is shining, birds are chirping, and for a split second, you feel like you have the world in your hands. But then, it starts. The thoughts, one after another, they pile up. What if things don't go as planned today? What if I mess up? Soon enough, what was supposed to be an optimistic day turns into a wave of anxiety, leaving you feeling trapped in a loop of worry. It's a feeling we all know too well. Whether it's about your job, relationships, or just the pressure of life in general, worrying can quickly take over your mind. You start thinking about every possible outcome, every detail that could go wrong. But here's the thing. What if I told you that worrying doesn't help? What if there was a way to break this cycle, to stop letting your mind run wild with concerns and start focusing on what truly matters? This is where pragmatism comes in. Pragmatism teaches us to focus on what's real and actionable rather than getting stuck in theoretical worries. Instead of imagining all the worst-case scenarios, we should turn our attention to solving the actual problems in front of us. You see, in life, there's always going to be uncertainty. But instead of worrying about the unknown, what if we shifted our focus to the concrete actions we can take right now? When you choose to solve problems rather than overthinking them, you free yourself from the grip of anxiety and start making progress, one step at a time. Now, think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever caught yourself worrying about something that never even happened? Or spent hours stressed about an event that, when it finally came, wasn't nearly as bad as you thought? It's easy to get caught in these mental traps, and it's even easier to fall into the habit of endlessly analyzing and worrying. But what if, instead of worrying, we embrace the idea that we are capable of solving our own problems? What if we took a step back and reminded ourselves that each problem is an opportunity for action, for growth? That's the essence of pragmatism, focusing on what's practical and real, not the endless cycle of what-ifs. As we reflect on this, it's almost as if a wave of nostalgia sweeps over us. Do you remember a time when you faced a problem head-on, without hesitation? Maybe it was during school, at work, or even in a personal relationship. Back then, you didn't let worry stop you. You tackled things as they came, figuring out solutions in real time, and before you knew it, the issue was resolved. That sense of accomplishment, the relief of having solved something that once felt insurmountable, can be so powerful. It's easy to forget that we are capable of this. Over the years, it's easy to let doubt creep in, but the truth is, you've solved problems before. You can do it again. Now picture this. You're standing at a crossroads. Your mind starts racing, thoughts of possible failures, missed opportunities, and mistakes cloud your judgment. It's in these moments that pragmatism offers us a different approach. It asks us, what can we do right now to solve the problem? Not next week, not tomorrow, but today. What is the most practical and efficient step forward? This line of thinking doesn't just help reduce worry, it sparks a sense of curiosity. What happens when you stop worrying and start acting? What would your life look like if you focused more on taking action than dwelling on hypothetical scenarios. You begin to realize that the path to overcoming anxiety isn't by avoiding problems, but by actively engaging with them, one step at a time. Number 2, control what you can, let go of the rest. Imagine a world where everything is within your control. You wake up and every detail of your day, from what you eat to what you wear, is perfectly in line with what you want. Life feels manageable, predictable, and in your hands. For a moment, it feels amazing. But then reality sets in. The emails flood in, unexpected events disrupt your plans, and suddenly you realize that life is far less predictable than you'd hoped. We've all experienced this. You may wake up with a plan, but then the world outside doesn't follow your script. People cancel plans, your car breaks down, a work project falls apart, and the more these things happen, the more you feel like you're spinning out of control. It's easy to get overwhelmed by these uncontrollable factors. You start questioning why things aren't going your way, and a sense of helplessness creeps in. But here's the pragmatic truth. Trying to control everything is not only exhausting, it's also unrealistic. Pragmatism teaches us to focus on what is within our control and let go of what isn't. We spend so much time stressing over the things that we can't change, whether it's the weather, the actions of others, or the state of the world around us. But what if we stopped? What if we took a step back and recognized that worrying about these external factors doesn't actually help? You see, in every situation, there are things you can control, and there are things you can't. The key to managing anxiety and stress is learning to differentiate between the two. By focusing only on what you can influence, you free yourself from the mental burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. Take a moment and think about the last time you felt completely out of control. Maybe it was when you tried to juggle too many tasks at once, or when someone else's decisions impacted your plans. It's frustrating, right? But what if instead of fighting against what you couldn't change, you let go of that struggle? Imagine how much energy you could save by redirecting your attention to the things you can impact, the things that are truly within your reach. Now, let's dive into nostalgia for a second. Do you remember a time when you let go of something that was eating at you? Perhaps a relationship, a job, or a dream that wasn't coming to fruition. At first, it felt like you were losing something important, something you couldn't live without. But in time, you began to realize that by letting go, you gained freedom. The weight was lifted, and you found a new sense of clarity. This feeling, this sense of release, is what pragmatism encourages us to embrace. By focusing on what's within our control and accepting what's outside of it, we can finally experience peace, knowing that we're not responsible for everything. Think about how much time and mental energy you've spent worrying about things beyond your influence. What if you could redirect that focus? Instead of getting frustrated with the things you can't change, what if you put that energy into something more productive? What if, by focusing on the here and now, you found the clarity to solve the problems that are actually in your hands? This is where the curiosity factor kicks in. Have you ever stopped to consider how different life would feel if you simply let go of the need to control everything? Imagine living each day with the understanding that some things are out of your hands, and that's okay. What would it be like to just focus on what you can do rather than what others are doing? Would you feel more empowered, more focused? The possibilities are endless when you start embracing the idea that control is not about managing everything around you, but managing yourself in the face of the uncontrollable. By letting go of the things you can't change, you open the door to a more peaceful, purposeful existence. It's about accepting that life will never be perfect, but you can always choose how to respond to it. And when you focus on what's in your control, you'll realize that, in the end, you have more power than you ever thought possible. Number 3, take action, not anxiety. Think about the last time you felt paralyzed by anxiety. Maybe it was about a big decision, a presentation at work, or an important conversation you needed to have. The anxious thoughts swirl around in your mind, each one more intense than the last, creating a storm of worry. And the longer you sit with it, the more overwhelming it becomes. You tell yourself you need to act, but the weight of the anxiety makes it feel almost impossible to do anything at all. It's like being stuck in quicksand. Every effort to move only seems to make things worse. But here's the twist. Anxiety itself doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it often just keeps you stuck in place, spinning in circles of doubt and fear. Pragmatism, however, offers a different perspective. It teaches us that instead of being consumed by anxiety, we can take action. Action doesn't just move you forward, it cuts through the noise of anxious thoughts and puts you in the driver's seat. And once you take that first step, no matter how small, you'll find that the anxiety starts to lose its power over you. Imagine waking up in the morning and immediately feeling the pressure of everything you need to do. The to-do list grows longer by the minute, and the anxiety builds up. But here's the question. What if instead of staying frozen in that anxious space, you simply chose to act? Maybe it's sending that email, making that phone call, or taking that first step toward a bigger goal. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to act. That's the power of pragmatism. It's about making real, tangible progress rather than letting your worries control your next move. Reflect for a moment on a time when you pushed past anxiety and took action. Perhaps it was a time when you were feeling overwhelmed, but you decided to do just one thing. Maybe it was something small, making a plan, having a conversation, or even taking a short walk to clear your head. When you took that step, something shifted, didn't it? It's as if the fog of anxiety started to clear, and suddenly, things didn't feel as daunting. This is the essence of pragmatism in action, focusing on what's in front of you and taking real steps, no matter how small. Now, let's dive into a more nostalgic place. Remember a time when you faced something difficult but acted anyway. Maybe it was a challenging situation at work or school, or a personal obstacle that seemed insurmountable. At first, anxiety and fear clouded your thoughts. But when you took that first step, however small, it became easier. You made progress. Even if the outcome wasn't perfect, you learned something from taking action. That feeling of momentum, of having control over your life, can be incredibly empowering. It's proof that when we stop overthinking and start doing, we begin to move forward. So, what about now? Think about where you are in life and the areas where anxiety still holds sway. What if, instead of trying to resolve everything all at once, you simply took one small action today? What would that feel like? It's curious to consider, isn't it? How much progress could you make if you simply started moving, even if the steps are tiny? It's like a snowball. Small actions over time lead to massive results. And the best part is, each action reduces the power of anxiety. Every step forward, no matter how insignificant it seems, is one less thing to worry about. When we look at life through the lens of pragmatism, we realize that action is often the antidote to anxiety. It's not about avoiding fear or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it's about acknowledging the fear and then choosing to take action anyway. Pragmatism teaches us that the key to overcoming anxiety isn't by waiting for the perfect moment or trying to control everything. It's about moving through the discomfort and making progress step by step. Number 4, turn worries into constructive steps. Picture this. You're lying awake at night, your mind racing with worries. Thoughts about work, relationships, or the future swirl around in your head. pulling you deeper into a vortex of anxiety. You can feel the weight of these concerns pressing down on you, each one more urgent than the last. The more you try to push them away, the more they seem to multiply. At that moment, it's hard to see a way out. But here's the truth. What if you could turn those worries into something more productive? What if those anxious thoughts, instead of paralyzing you, could be reframed into actionable steps that actually move you forward? This is where pragmatism comes into play. Pragmatism teaches us that worry isn't inherently bad. It's a natural response to uncertainty and fear. But instead of letting worry consume us, we can use it as a tool for growth. Every worry we have is a signal that something needs attention. Rather than getting caught up in spiraling thoughts, we can shift our focus to identifying the practical steps needed to address the issue. Worry becomes a catalyst for action, not a barrier to it. Think about the last time you were worried about something. Maybe it was an important deadline, a tough conversation, or an uncertain future. When you look back on it, what could have happened if you took that worry and turned it into a plan of action? Maybe you would have broken down the problem into smaller, manageable steps. Maybe you would have sought help or gathered more information to feel more confident. By taking this approach, the worry shifts from being an overwhelming force to something that drives you to take concrete actions. It's not about ignoring your feelings of anxiety. It's about acknowledging them and using them to propel you forward. Now let's take a moment to tap into some nostalgia. Do you remember a time when you faced a major worry, but instead of letting it consume you, you turned it into a challenge you could solve? Perhaps it was a time when you had to prepare for a big presentation or tackle a difficult problem. In the beginning, you might have felt overwhelmed, but eventually, you broke the task into manageable steps. As you made progress, you started to feel a sense of control. Each small step you took reduced the anxiety, and the more action you took, the less power the worry had over you. That feeling of turning a worry into a success is incredibly powerful. It's a reminder that our anxieties don't have to paralyze us. They can be the very thing that pushes us toward growth and achievement. Now, as you reflect on those moments, think about where you are now. Is there a worry that's weighing you down? Maybe it's a project you're working on, a decision you need to make, or a fear of failure. Instead of getting lost in the endless loop of what-ifs, what if you took a moment to reframe your worries into steps that you can take right now? What's the first small action you can take today to move forward? It might be something simple, making a phone call, writing down your thoughts, or setting a timer to focus for just 15 minutes. Each of these small steps is an opportunity to shift your mindset from worry to action. The curiosity here lies in asking, what would happen if we all stopped viewing worry as an obstacle and started seeing it as a call to action? How much more could we achieve if we took our worries and used them to fuel our next move? It's not about eliminating the discomfort of worry. It's about shifting the way we respond to it. By turning worry into constructive steps, we take away its power over us and replace it with a sense of control and accomplishment. Pragmatism encourages us to approach our worries with a clear, action-oriented mindset. Instead of being overwhelmed by what we can't control, we focus on what we can do. When we turn worry into action, we don't just quiet the noise of anxiety, we start creating tangible progress in our lives. And with each constructive step we take, we move closer to the outcomes we desire. The more we practice this mindset, the more we begin to realize that worry isn't a dead end. It's an invitation to grow, learn, and move forward. Number 5, focus on results, not thoughts. Imagine you've spent hours thinking about a project. You've analyzed every detail, considered every angle, and created mental scenarios for every possible outcome. You've been stuck in a loop of endless thinking, constantly questioning if you're doing things right, if you're on track, if your next move will be the right one. Despite all this thinking, nothing has been accomplished. You're mentally exhausted, yet physically still in the same place you were when you started. Sound familiar? We all have moments like this, where our thoughts, rather than helping us move forward, keep us stagnant. But what if there was a way to break this cycle? What if the key to progress was not about thinking harder, but about focusing on results instead? This is where pragmatism shines. Pragmatism teaches us to value real-world outcomes over theoretical thinking. It's easy to get lost in our thoughts, spinning in circles of doubt, hesitation, and indecision. But what we often forget is that it's the tangible results that matter most, not the constant stream of thoughts swirling in our minds. The more we focus on achieving results, the less power our thoughts have to control us. It's not about overthinking or doubting every decision. It's about committing to actions that lead to concrete outcomes, regardless of the mental noise. Let's reflect on a time when you were caught in the web of overthinking. Maybe it was deciding on a new job, taking a leap in a relationship, or even something as simple as choosing what to eat. You weighed all the options, considered the pros and cons, and maybe even asked others for their advice. Yet, the more you thought, the more complicated everything seemed. But at some point, when you took action, when you finally made the decision, it felt right. You saw the results. The job was just a job. The relationship was just a relationship. The more you focused on the action, the more clarity you gained. The lesson? Thoughts, though important, are often just noise until they are put into action. Results speak louder than endless contemplation. Now, let's take a step into nostalgia. Can you remember a time when you were focused solely on achieving a result? Think back to when you were working on a project, a hobby, or a goal, anything that mattered to you. At some point, you had to let go of the need for perfect planning and just dive in. You focused on the outcome, not on the endless debate in your head about whether or not it was the right thing to do. You put one foot in front of the other, and over time, you saw the fruits of your labor. That feeling of accomplishment, of knowing that you achieved something tangible because you focused on the results instead of getting caught up in thought after thought. It's empowering. It's proof that when we stop overanalyzing and focus on results, we create real progress. Number 5, focus on results, not thoughts. Imagine you've spent hours thinking about a project. You've analyzed every detail, considered every angle, and created mental scenarios for every possible outcome. You've been stuck in a loop of endless thinking, constantly questioning if you're doing things right, if you're on track, if your next move will be the right one. Despite all this thinking, nothing has been accomplished. You're mentally exhausted, yet physically still in the same place you were when you started. Sound familiar? We all have moments like this, where our thoughts, rather than helping us move forward, keep us stagnant. But what if there was a way to break this cycle? What if the key to progress was not about thinking harder, but about focusing on results instead? This is where pragmatism shines. Pragmatism teaches us to value real-world outcomes over theoretical thinking. It's easy to get lost in our thoughts, spinning in circles of doubt, hesitation, and indecision. But what we often forget is that it's the tangible results that matter most, not the constant stream of thoughts swirling in our minds. The more we focus on achieving results, the less power our thoughts have to control us. It's not about overthinking or doubting every decision. It's about committing to actions that lead to concrete outcomes, regardless of the mental noise. Let's reflect on a time when you were caught in the web of overthinking. Maybe it was deciding on a new job, taking a leap in a relationship, or even something as simple as choosing what to eat. You weighed all the options, considered the pros and cons, and maybe even asked others for their advice. Yet, the more you thought, the more complicated everything seemed. But at some point, when you took action, when you finally made the decision, it felt right. You saw the results. The job was just a job. The relationship was just a relationship. The more you focused on the action, the more clarity you gained. The lesson? Thoughts, though important, are often just noise until they are put into action. Results speak louder than endless contemplation. Now, let's take a step into nostalgia. Can you remember a time when you were focused solely on achieving a result? Think back to when you were working on a project, a hobby, or a goal, anything that mattered to you. At some point, you had to let go of the need for perfect planning and just dive in. You focused on the outcome, not on the endless debate in your head about whether or not it was the right thing to do. You put one foot in front of the other, and over time, you saw the fruits of your labor. That feeling of accomplishment, of knowing that you achieved something tangible because you focused on the results instead of getting caught up in thought after thought. It's empowering. It's proof that when we stop overanalyzing and focus on results, we create real progress.